We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hockey BuzzCast. My new improved set. I got us. It's funny because I'm using a different computer now, and I just finally put a computer down here instead of moving my laptop down here. I just thought I would take an old computer and put it here, and it actually is working better than my laptop worked down here. I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
the time over your left. I was gonna say the time over your left shoulder. Just as I was mentioning, it was at 111. You know what they call that score in bowling, don't you?
no.
Well, I'll clean it up. They usually call it a crap house, but it's with the letter S.
Wow, we needed more bowling lingo on this show.
It's been a while since we've had any really good bowling comments on the show. For sure.
Well, I could do my Pete Weber imitation, which is basically the Triple H DX pelvic thrust,
which is a disgrace because was it his dad that was the great Earl Weber?
Dick Weber.
Dick Weber. Yeah, and he was a great guy, and he had no fanfare, anything. And his son acts like he's a professional wrestler. He's an idiot.
Remember, I mean, there were those bowlers. There were the Earl Anthonys and the Dick Webers who were just like sort of mild mannered guys, and then like guys like Mark Roth. I think they picked up his clothing from like the reject bin for golfers because remember he wore like all the exotic color pants and stuff like that.
Yeah, Mark Roth was the first guy that I ever saw with a sweep do. Like I didn't really know what that was, and because he would get shown on like Wide World of Sports, and if I was in that day because it was raining and I was watching pro bowling because, let's face it, there were no video games.
Right.
Mark Roth would have to keep doing this with his hair, and then I realized, yeah, this is a dumb thing to do with your hair.
Chris Schenkel was always the guy who did Chris Schenkel was always the guy in ABC who did the. It's sad that I know this stuff, folks.
But I do have a pro bowler story, Eck, and you're gonna love this. So.
That's a lot. It's a big statement. Go ahead, Russ.
When I was 15 years old, pro bowling hit Farmingdale, Long Island, and Farmingdale Lanes, and that's where I'm from. And they said, "Hey, anybody who wants to help sort of unload the truck here, you'll get a free ball." So I did. We unloaded. We were unpaid 15-year-old help because I did bowl at that lane, that alley and everything. Everything gets done. No ball. We get totally stiffed. Thanks, pro bowlers.
Really? Yeah.
I'm going to stick it to you.
Yeah, that's right. And you just did on a nationally syndicated podcast.
That's right.
Internationally syndicated podcast.
On YouTube, on iTunes, and now on TuneIn Radio.
On TuneIn Radio. So if I ask Alexa, it'll play it. Huh? I guess we'll try that later. Interesting. Yeah, so that's good. Yeah, so by the way, if you have an Alexa, let's try this. Let's see if it works. Okay, so you can plug it in over here.
It's not even plugged in.
I know. Well, I just I was redoing my set.
Plug her in. She can't work.
Here she is. My girl Alexa, who I dressed up in an R2D2 clothes.
Who runs off of ACDC.
Oh, for sure. But let's see what it says. Let's see if I can tell it. If I can ask it to play the Hockey BuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. So if you have this, it's of course loading right now. That's what this blue line means. So I'm delaying until.
Well, wait till the end of the show and we can.
No, we can. I know it's not. It's I'm not going to wait for this. My shirt, by the way, says if you're watching it, I am not strange. I play goalie. This comes from the fine people that bring hockey back, which I like their company a lot.
Cool shirt.
Yes. So I have this, and of course, my wife says I am both strange and play goalie, but that's her thing. Hello, Alexa. So let's see if Alexa can play us. Alexa, play the Hockey BuzzCast podcast.
You'd like to play the program called the Hockey BuzzCast, right?
Yes.
I can't get the program, the Hockey BuzzCast.
Why would you ask me if that's what I want and then tell me you can't do it?
Alexa, you suck.
No, don't say that. So much for that advertiser, right?
Let's start the show.
I'm just kidding. What were you saying before the show?
I'm sorry.
All right. No, I'm just kidding. No, it soon will work. We're going to try it again tomorrow. At some point, tune in. We'll catch up with Alexa, and she'll be able to play us Hockey BuzzCast. I think it'd be fun to play a recording of the Hockey BuzzCast while doing the next Hockey BuzzCast. That's like, a dream within a dream stuff to me.
Yes.
That's your goal.
Yeah, that's my goal. All right, let's start the show here. I did find my bell hammer, but of course, when I was rearranging my thing, I lost my bell. So I have my bell hammer, but not my bell. Here we go. We'll just start the show from here. Ready? Ding, 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 ding.
I was going to say you could hit the Stanley Cup, but
Trying to make all these sounds. Oh God, what the hell's the date? Hold on. Sorry. Right with you guys. You want to tell me, or I can just keep looking.
Uncle Floyd, why don't you ask Alexa?
Alexa, what day is it?
Today is Tuesday, December 13th.
Thanks.
We should do that every time now.
There you go.
Because at least Alexa will get the friggin' day right.
Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, December 13th, 2016.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen. Come see me at the Wingate by Wyndham tonight in Voorhees, New Jersey, 7 o'clock at the at the Flyers fan club. I'll be signing all of my books, but mainly the Flyers book.
Very nice. Very nice. And I'm Eklund. You're watching Hockey BuzzCast on hockeybuzz.com, and there's nowhere you can find me tonight at all, or you better not, at least, because I plan on being at home doing nothing. But now I'm not. Now I'm doing the Hockey BuzzCast on hockeybuzz.com, the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time of day to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And today, the comings is Jonathan Toews returning to the lineup for the Chicago Blackhawks, who really sucked while he was gone and became. They really have played perfectly fine without him. But then they get.
So they really shouldn't bring him back, because if they played well without him, you don't want to bring Jonathan Toews back.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Henrik Lundqvist, #1 fan.
Yeah, I know. So that's something. I mean, isn't that? Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in a second too. But yeah. So the Penguins, the Blackhawks have been very, very good. The Penguins are my next topic. Sorry, a little bit tired today. Tough night last night around here.
Okay, I mean, and we remarked about this we talked about this on the webcast yesterday. The fact that the Blackhawks really, I mean, if Jonathan Toews was out for 40 games, obviously it would have an effect. But in a short window, I think it's even more amazing that they've been able to maintain the lead in the Central Division without Toews and without Corey Crawford, who last week had an appendectomy, an emergency appendectomy in Philadelphia. And they've been doing this without their #1 center and without their #1 goaltender. Scott Darling has picked up the slack and has played well. And, guys like Panarin and Hossa have stepped up. In a short window, teams can do this. And teams of a championship caliber, which the Blackhawks are, they can suck it up and do what they need to do. And, now they've survived that 9 games without Toews, and he comes back tonight against the Rangers.
And speaking of someone who has himself had a emergency appendectomy in Philadelphia, which I did have happen to me too as well. That's a painful thing to come back from in general. I was kind of surprised he got back from that. I mean, regular appendectomy is not so bad, but emergency.
It all depends. It depends if it's done like with a laparoscopic or not, and that's if it's laparoscopic, it's quicker.
It's much quicker, and with me it wasn't, because it was it burst while they were waiting to do it.
Yeah.
They said 2 to 3 weeks, so apparently it didn't burst. And it probably, if it was a less invasive procedure, then that would benefit him coming back quickly. I mean, how long was it before Ryan Callahan came back? Was it like 6 days? He had that.
Yeah. I mean, if you have it routinely done, it's no big deal. But boy, oh boy, if it bursts on you, you got lots of problems. It's a whole different world.
Oh yeah.
That was me, and that was just the most painful thing I've ever had.
It explains a lot.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. It is. It's all the scars on my body. Let's see. We have another interesting thing I found out about this. And speaking of teams that are going through different changes, what's the deal? What's the deal tonight, Russ? Because in this game, my feeling about playing backup goalies against top teams.
Mm-hmm.
Ranta, who of course has been playing extremely well, was the second player of the week last week. Came in second for player of the week. Is in tonight, and Henrik Lundqvist is sitting out his 4th in a row.
Okay, so Brent Seabrook comes back tonight too, and the last time Ranta beat them, neither Toews or Seabrook was there, and so that's a big difference. So if AB thinks that Ranta is the magic bullet for the Blackhawks. Well, those guys weren't there. So there's that. Antti Raanta is not going to play any better this year if you play him this game or you don't. He's getting paid to be a backup. He knows he's a backup. He's not trying to be a number one in this league. The only thing this can do is foul up Lundqvist. Lundqvist will say all the right things, but he's got to be itching to get back in there. Only after the first game did he say, hey, this was good to sort of, refocus and whatever. But that was a while ago. He's not saying that anymore. And he actually did say a couple of days ago, hey, we did talk about games this year. He goes, but I don't like to talk about how many games I'm going to play. I don't want to think about it. And he's right. But now he has to think about it. So now his coaches made him think about that. The coaches now alerted the media to start asking Lundqvist questions and everybody else on the team while you're sitting for 4 games and you've never done that before.
Yep.
All of these things now are being brought into this. And at best, let's say Antti Raanta gives up 2 goals and they win. What are you doing next game?
Right.
You play Lundqvist.
Okay.
I think the only reason that Raanta is playing tonight is because he's got 2 consecutive shutouts.
Okay. So now you're playing Lundqvist. So now Lundqvist plays on the road against Dallas, a team that he really has no urgency against. Like New Jersey would have been the best team to bring him against. He hates New Jersey. He's got great numbers against them. It's like an old shoe. But instead now, potentially he's coming back on the road either against Dallas or Nashville, which is not a great idea to do, I don't think. But now he's going to do that. Let's say he gives up 4 goals. Then what are you going to do? And they lose.
Well, that was the scenario we talked about yesterday, because I thought if you bring him back against Chicago now with Taves and Seabrook back, and he loses after Raanta has had 2 shutouts, then automatically you're going to get these people, some of them being idiots, some of them not, on Twitter, who will say, "Oh, you should have played Raanta because he had 2 shutouts." Well, they're playing Raanta after he has 2 shutouts, and if he has another shutout, then maybe you play him again. But if he doesn't get a shutout, even if he wins the game, your number 1 goalie is Henrik Lundqvist. You go back to him, and you go back to him often.
Okay, so now here's the next question. Let's say the New England Patriots, before Tom Brady came off suspension, were undefeated.
We know the quarterbacks are different than goaltenders.
No, they're not different. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I mean,
they are not different.
On this, but I'm kind of with Russ on this one. But I'm also the other thing about it. I always think about this too.
They're both wrong then, because if a quarterback is healthy in the NFL, unless it's a situation where a team like New England has guaranteed themselves home field advantage, the quarterback's going to play.
But let's equate. What's a shutout with a quarterback? Like a 3 touchdown pass game? I mean, what's the equivalent? I mean,
okay. Well,
guy comes off having 2 games, throwing 3 touchdown passes and 400 yards
and no interceptions. That's
no interceptions for 2 straight games. Do you pull him out?
They would. Belichick would pull him out in a second. Absolutely.
Well, I'll give you I think a good comparative. In the 90s. I think it was the second year they went to the Super Bowl. Jim Kelly got hurt for Buffalo. Frank Reich started at quarterback. He was the one who led them back for that big Houston victory. They went to Pittsburgh. He beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh when Kelly was less than 100%, but ready enough to play in the AFC Championship game. They went with Kelly over Reich, a healthy Reich.
Yeah,
Henrik Lundqvist is the goalie right now.
100% healthy.
But there's in the NFL, there's at that point, what were there 16 games or 14 games or whatever there were back then? I mean that's the difference here. I mean, 1 game for Raanta is not 1 game for an NFL quarterback. You're talking about
5 games, or 5.
A big percentage, right? So that's a big difference, I think.
Okay.
And
Tell me when this was done to Jonathan Quick or Martin Brodeur, where they didn't play for 4 consecutive games. Can you?
No, never. Unless it was.
I wonder about that, because I do recall goalies getting hot like this, backup goalies getting hot and being kept in a little bit longer.
Yeah, but not for 4 consecutive games.
I mean, was Brian Boucher the number 1 goalie in Phoenix when he had the 5 consecutive?
No, he wasn't at all.
But it's Phoenix. Forget it. They're not on Lundqvist level. You got.
How about the Penguins? Let's see. So Marc-Andre Fleury last year goes down, and Murray comes in and kicks it, and Fleury never returns. Now that's not saying it's going to happen here, but Matt Murray last year won the job. I'm not saying Ron is going to win the job away from
Over a
Lundqvist.
really extended period of time. Like this was over,
Yeah.
a long period of time. Like I'm just saying, you can't find me a goalie with Hall of Fame credentials that this has happened to.
Yeah.
Like even if Carter Hutton had 2 shutouts in a row last year, would they have sat Pecorine the minute he was healthy? No way.
I don't know. I don't. I mean, the thing about it is this, right? We like to look at it.
Hasn't had 2 consecutive shutouts either.
No, but when you look at the whole perspective of it, right?
No, it's not 2 consecutive. No.
This is a team, right? This is a team you're talking about, and it's a sports team. And on a sports team, when a guy is playing hot, you want to reward that player. And the idea is, even though the coach can't think about who's making what, who's the goalie of the future, the coach should really just be thinking about rewarding the players that are playing their best.
Yeah, actually, it is 2 consecutive shutouts because Mike Dunham did it too, and Mike Dunham didn't really supplant anybody at the time when he did it. I'm just saying, I think you've created something now because, like, it's the lead story in Canada, it's the lead story everywhere. Players will answer to it now; they're going to get tired of it, and
it's the lead story because there were 2 games on Monday. That's why it's the lead story.
But the question is okay. It is the lead story. It is happening. So now the question is this: how does Lundqvist react to it? Right. So it's whether or not we think it's right or wrong. It's up to, is this the kind of, now Lundqvist is, has a whole different kind of personality than a lot of goalies. So we wonder, some goalies, like if this was me, if I was Lundqvist, this would piss me off and I would come in there and I would kill it. I would do my best. I would really push harder and I would be better. Lundqvist has often been, we've talked about it many times, is kind of referred to as this, fine automobile that everything has to be perfect for, or what have you.
Yeah.
How do you think he responds to this? Do you think he comes in and kills it?
I don't know. I really don't know because now you've added an element of rust to his game because, again, I've witnessed him during these really hard practices. Mike and I talked about it yesterday with Allaire, and that's great, but it still doesn't change gameplay. Gameplay is different. There's no Tyler Seguin bearing down on you in practice to potentially undress you on a 1-on-0 at some point in the game when that's probably going to happen with Dallas. And so that's the thing.
Well, it's sort of rust versus rest here. I mean,
right.
And I get the fact that he's a finely tuned machine and he wants to play often and he normally plays 60 games. And I'm not saying he's not going to play 60 games. I just think right now, things are going great for the Rangers in spite of the fact that they're having some injuries. Ranta gets 2 shutouts. I understand why Vigneault would go with him for a third game because the Blackhawks couldn't beat him.
But he did this. Vigneault did this with Luongo and Schneider. Now, of course, Ranta is no Schneider, but he did that, and it eventually sunk his season. It did.
He did. I mean, he did it in the playoffs, but the reason why was because Luongo was starting to need the Heimlich in that playoff series.
Okay, but what if in this Dallas game, Lundqvist legitimately has rust on him and gives up 2 goals on the first 2 shots? Are you pulling him?
No, like I said, I think
but now you've brought that into it.
Yeah, but I think outwardly everybody's looking at this and we think that that's what's going to happen. I think what's going on here is they're riding the Ranta wave here. He's got 2 shutouts. He's going against his former team. He's motivated. If he gets another shutout, great. You maybe start him another game. But basically, even if he wins, if he gives up a couple goals and looks like Antti Ranta, which is a good backup goaltender, you're going back to Lundqvist. And even if he trips on the first game, you're going to keep going back to him because if you remember the year that he signed his extension, he played terribly in the first couple months. They kept playing him. They're going to keep playing him. He's the number 1 guy.
Okay, what if Ranta gets another shutout tonight?
I think they go with him again until he does.
I think that. You can't do that.
Lundqvist, though, as a goalie, can Lundqvist really justify saying that I'm going to step in for a guy who's got 3 shutouts? I mean,
but it is easy to justify because that's his job. He's the number 1 guy. There's never, ever going to be a question if Antti Ranta is going to be the goalie that brings you to the Stanley Cup because the answer is always going to be no. And so at some point, you have to make the change on this no matter how well Ranta's playing. It's not going to hurt Ranta's confidence. He's not going to be mad. He gets it.
Yeah. I don't know. From a goalie's perspective, I mean, Ranta is definitely, I'm not going to say he's a loose cannon, but this is the guy we talked about before who was in the press box not happy about the fact that he was backing up in Chicago.
But that was after a long period of them ignoring him. And I'll tell you where it started. again, it started at the Winter Classic. Because I remember interviewing Ronta at great length at the Winter Classic, and there really was a question as to what goalie was going to go. He really wanted to be in that Winter Classic. He did.
Yeah. And he did. I mean, and he hates Chicago because so there's a lot of things I think that.
Well, he didn't even get his name on the cup. They didn't even put his name on the cup.
Yeah, he got
which is crazy because usually teams will appeal for that kind of thing and actually get it done. I mean, that whole name on the cup thing is kind of been told is sort of a bit of a farce that teams can make a plea, and the NHL is not going to say no.
No, he got a day with the cup, but he didn't get his name on it.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's another part of the perfect storm. Ronta is going up against the Blackhawks tonight, so. You've got the 2 shutouts. You're going up against a team that he doesn't like at all. I mean, I think I'm okay with the Rangers doing this. I don't think it's a big deal. I think people are making a bigger deal than it is.
Yeah, and you got to remember, Ronta has a reason for animosity when it comes to Chicago because he got supplanted by Scott Darling, who played in the Southern Professional Hockey League in the ECHL.
Yeah, but he was obviously like a local darling because he's from Chicago and everything. I mean, Ronta's pissed off about the Blackhawks. So now that's to say. And the Rangers are in perfect position now. If this is going to screw up Lundqvist forever, there's two problems with this situation, right? One, it screws up Lundqvist for a long time. The other is it puts that whole thing into the fans' head. The backup goalie is always the sexier choice, right? And everyone's like, is Lundqvist on the downside of his career? And if Lundqvist has a couple of bad games and Ronta's had 2 shutouts last time he played. What's that kind of thing? I don't think that happens with the Rangers fans. I think Rangers fans are smart enough to know that Lundqvist is the goalie.
You better go read Twitter then.
All right, well maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, if you're a Rangers fan, you should be smart enough to know that Lundqvist is your goalie and Ronta's your backup, and that's
There's a lot of Lundqvist haters. There are.
Oh, I know. There are always every single starting goalie in the history of the NHL. There's Price haters. It's as crazy as it sounds. I mean, it's just the case. We're going to get to Montreal Boston last night a little as well, but before we do that, I want to talk about the GM meetings which are going on right now, and our buddy Kevin Allen is down there, and trying to get him on before the end of the week here. We might actually get a chance to do that. But Detroit Red Wings general manager Ken Holland is he's like one of these he's the guy who brought you the 3-on-3 overtime, so to speak.
He's the cutting edge. Yeah. He's
one of these cutting edge guys who loves to throw things out there. Put in the proposal to adopt a wild card play-in game similar to Major League Baseball, and it would add a third wild card playoff team to each conference. The bottom 2 wild card teams facing each other in a 1-game playoff. We talked about this last week. My great idea was shot down by everybody of all 32 teams making the playoffs. This was a subpar second idea that we had. And so the idea here is that these 2 wild card teams facing each other. Now, it was described as it was called stupid by a few of the players and GMs. This idea, which is not the most respectful response to someone when they can't tell you that, hey, my idea, and somebody says that's stupid. But
even we didn't even call your crazy ass idea stupid.
You didn't call it stupid because it was brilliant. But Ron Hextall, personally, I'm not in favor of it. I think we demand a lot of our players, and playing more games I don't think is the solution. It is one more game, Hexy. I mean, it's not.
He's very rigid, Hexy. He really is.
Oh my God, he is. Yeah. So Dallas, Jim Nill, it's something we've discussed, and it has gained some traction. Now, understand that Jim Nill and Holland are very close. Nill's going to always support Holland. He was groomed by Holland. Holland's his mentor.
Okay, this is the thing. When the lockout happened in 2012, one of the proposals, and it was out there, and I believe guys like Kyprios and Darren Drager reported it, that what was on the table was a play-in game. It would be 7 versus 8, or 7 versus 10, 8 versus 9. Two play-in games for each conference. Now, maybe this is the compromise, and it's only 8-9. I think eventually this is going to get in, because if you're going to be the 32 teams, which you're probably going to be within 2 or 3 years, you can't have just half the league. You're going to probably want to have 18 to 20 teams in the playoffs, 2/3.
I agree with you, and I think that's why you should have 32. But what if Jim Nill says, what if a second wildcard team has a 6-point lead on the 9th place team? Should they be knocked out of the playoffs because they lose 1 game? And I'd say yes.
I mean, it's close enough. Usually it is close enough. I'll tell you what, I would make this like a bill in Congress, and this is what I would do. If I were one of the owners, I would be like, you know what? I support this idea, but because I just wrote this article yesterday on doing away with 3-on-3 overtime and potentially the shootout, if you do that, if you get rid of 3-on-3 and the shootout, I'll sign on for this. And if you think about it, then players, it won't matter that you're playing an extra game. You'll be playing less every night.
Oh boy, Russ, I really hope the NHL becomes more like our political system that we have here in the United States of America. That's great. That would really be that's such a fantastic idea.
See, I
don't
don't
even know where to go with that.
I don't buy this argument right now. I don't buy it at all, because once a new system is determined, it becomes the new normal. And I know, like, you remember when the wild card situation happened in baseball. I mean, there's been a couple instances where a team that finished in first place, where teams were tied the last game of the regular season, one was going to be the wild card, the other one was going to be the division. The game was meaningless, whereas before the wild card, that would have been a play-in game or a winner-take-all game, and it would have been a sort of a cutthroat game at number 162. All it's going to do is it's going to make the battle for that ninth place what the battle for the eighth spot.
Right, that's exactly what it does. But except for the fact that eighth place now, here's where it's different. The battle for eighth place is a battle to get to a best of 7 series, and so like that's why it's so much more interesting. Like the battle for ninth place is the battle to get to play one more game.
Right.
When you get a best of 7 series, the great thing about the playoffs is when they start, everybody is even again, right. And it's best of 7. You got to win 4. It doesn't matter if you finished 8th or 1st. You get the one extra home game. Sometimes who cares? It's like completely. And that's what I like about it. I mean, Peter Luco says, we're playing. I think it's fine the way it is. I mean, we're playing 82 games. I think it's fair, and I think it's really working. It's coming down to the end of the season anyway. Right now, it couldn't be more exciting. I just think that kind of cheapens it. To which Jacob Voracek responds, "I think it is just stupid. A 1-game playoff. I don't think this is baseball. If you have 82 games, get in the playoffs. If you're in, if you're not in, you're not in. If you're out, you're out."
And this
Way to go, Jake.
Europeans don't like baseball. We've established that.
This is coming from someone who was on the team that snuck in 8th place. So the last thing that he wants to do is to go 82 games to get into 8th and then have to play a 1-game play-in game.
Listen, I just watched the Mets lose a 1-game playoff this past season, but it was exciting. And I think, you know what? I don't think it cheapened it in the sense that, hey, you still made the playoffs. You're playing when a lot of other teams aren't playing, and it's really long odds of that team coming through and winning the Stanley Cup anyhow. It is.
Get with the program, NHL. The college basketball in the NCAA tournament. They had one play-in game for 64th and 65. Now they have a play-in game in each bracket, in each round of 16 or each region. The Major League Baseball has a play-in game for each league. So I think that this is eventually going to happen, especially when you get to 32 teams, having only 50% of the league making the playoffs after 82 games. I think you gotta give more opportunity there, and that's
the other thing. The other positive it does, Mike. The other positive is now you won't have a team sort of like the Blackhawks or the Kings where they're comfortable moving in on that 8th spot because they know once the playoffs start, they'll ramp it up again and they could win it all. Now you don't want to be in that last spot because you could be out after 1 game. That is going to change the dynamic of teams trying to make the playoffs, and I'm good with that.
Right, and
it's very rare that a team it makes it comfortably into the 8th spot. I mean, it's been in history has shown us that even the year the Kings made the playoffs to finish 8th, they did it on the last game of the season.
Imagine if they go with what I was suggesting, which is a 9 and a 10, and having the 2 wild cards play a play-in game in each conference. Then there's going to be a battle not only to make 7 and 8, maybe to get home ice in the play-in game, but there's going to be more of a battle for the top 3 spots.
I agree with that.
Guaranteed a 7-game series.
I'll give you that, Mike. That's a good point. I do agree. The Pittsburgh Penguins are just crazy hot. I mean, as is almost everyone in the Metropolitan Division, by the way.
Yes, they are, but let's put things in context. All
right, context is this. They have scored 50 goals in their last 10 games.
But let's put things in context. They were playing the Arizona Coyotes.
Yes, I do have something to say about the Coyotes for sure.
Go ahead, Russ.
Okay.
Because I watched this game intently while Mike was watching the better game. I knew this game wasn't going to be as good, but I needed to sort of watch and see what I was seeing out of the Coyotes. And it's really but what I've been saying all year. Just say you're rebuilding, because otherwise it's embarrassing. And
Yeah.
they were embarrassed. Mike Smith was embarrassed. Their defense was embarrassed. It was 3-0 before they could blink. I mean, look, it could be the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Rangers would have gotten 6 goals too. The Flyers would have gotten 5 goals too. Like, I'm just saying, this Coyotes team is woeful. And they're better off just saying, hey, you know what? We're going to start from scratch. That's why they signed a guy like Verbata. And I got to tell you, Shane Doan, right? Yep. Shane Doan is too slow. Yep. Unless he's getting on a team that is going to be on a fourth line where he just comes out for 6-7 minutes a game and maybe on the power play to stand in front of the net, he is too slow. And I was watching him drag guys down from behind, getting penalties because he's not fast enough anymore to cover them. Like, that is a real thing now. So anybody who wants to trade for Shane Doan, that's a potential problem.
I mean, look at the Coyotes right now. Max Domi is out probably, I think they said 4 to 6 weeks because he was fighting. He broke his hand.
Yep.
Anthony Duclair, who was one of their star young players last year, is a healthy scratch, and apparently they're looking to move him. Honestly, if they went with the developmental model and did what you said, Russ, and say we're rebuilding, we're trying to. They should, for the first thing they should do is send Lawson Krause and Chikrin to the World Juniors to play for Team Canada. Let them feel good about themselves. Let them have a chance at winning a gold medal, because this year is going to be drudgery in Scottsdale. It's going to be painful. They're going to finish in 30th place or close to it. And, maybe, after the World Junior, they come back. There'll still be a learning process. They'll get 3.5 months of playing in the NHL. But why, they're adamant that they're not going to send them to the World Junior. And I'm like, why? So you can stay out of 30th place ahead of Colorado?
Right.
That's true. I mean, I think that I think it's about sort of selling their fans, and keeping themselves competitive. And they basically, what they've done is very different than what other teams would do in the NHL. They basically have told people.
I'd rather sell hope.
They've told people, listen, we're going to be not very good, but we're going to play all the best players. That's what they're saying.
Well, I mean,
but these are not the best players anymore. You might get better results in 20 more games with the younger players if you put them all in and just what they can do. You might.
Honestly, if you're gonna play all the best players, then you should be playing Louis Domingue over Mike Smith. Because
correct.
To me,
no, that's true. I agree with that. And there's definitely some
over 5 million reasons why you're playing Mike Smith instead of Louis Domingue.
Let's get into Montreal-Boston. And thank God that Montreal-Boston still is a rivalry that can be angry and mean and hateful.
Yes, it's a beautiful
after all
thing.
these years.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yep. I mean, Toronto fans, of course, would like to see these teams beat up on each other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But last night, a couple big hits, crazy stuff. I think I can show you guys this hit sequence that took place that was really kind of nuts. I figured out my whole screen share thing better. Maybe
while you're pulling that up, the controversial one was Torrey. Well, first,
right, and that's one of these I have here. So
the first controversial one. The one you're going to show right now, Eck, is the elect. And honestly,
this is Emlin's hit on Pasternak, followed by
Krug's on Shaw.
This is Mike's favorite player in the NHL.
Me. Sorry. Here we go. So here we go. All right. So this is what's going on, Harry. So here we go. Try to zoom in a little bit so you can see this better. But all right, zoom in.
We can see it.
Okay, you can see it. Fine. All right, we're gonna play it. I'll play it here. So this is. All right. So that's the hit, the Emelin hit on Pasternak, and here's the Krug, and that's the Krug hit on Shaw. Emelin hit Pasternak, Krug hit on Shaw.
The NHL Department of Player Safety declined to review Krug's hit on Shaw because we can't see it because this replay is going really quickly. But Shaw was leaning forward, and Krug.
I stopped it there. The point is leaning forward. But what I think the difference in these hits to me, and what I don't think anyone's talking about, maybe they are. I just have missed it today when I was listening. Okay, so Pasternak had the puck when Emelin hit him, but Krug Shaw did not have the puck.
No.
And I think that's why I think the Shaw one is I think the Krug one should be looked at.
You know why they're not looking at the Shaw one? I can tell you why. The reason why is because Shaw's the bigger player. Anytime the smaller player hits the bigger player, they never review it. When the bigger player hits the smaller player, then it's like, uh-oh. You
Yeah,
know?
Is Shaw that much bigger than Krug?
Yes.
Yeah, Krug's only like 5'9" or 5'10", and Shaw's I think 6 foot. But also,
He's not big, though.
Krug did not leave his feet. And if
No,
you
but he did. But he still hit the head area. My problem is this: you put the shoulder into the jaw. Both of those guys got hit either in the jaw or the head.
Right.
That is how you get a concussion in life. And if you are going to outlaw headshots, the jaw should be part of the head. I'm sorry. That's the way it is, because that is what triggers a concussion. The side impact does on the boards is the worst. And then a jaw is like really the second worst.
Well, the determination was that Shaw was in it, made himself vulnerable by leaning forward. So I mean,
So he made Krug hit him.
no,
Yeah.
I mean, Krug,
His
but
fault.
Wait, so Krug couldn't have avoided him? Is that what we're being told?
no, I mean, this
It
game
was unavoidable.
in this game you wanted to hit people. I mean,
Right.
so
But that's my point. Krug could have avoided the contact.
Yeah.
It is not Shaw's fault that he was leaning a little forward.
well,
He was, in other words, when you're leaning forward, you're asking for it.
no, it's Shaw's no, but you have to make sure that you protect yourself at all times. That's what if you're not protected, if you make yourself vulnerable, if you're like Dean McCammond and you're always making yourself vulnerable and you're a human victim like he was in his NHL career, then you're partly responsible for and the thing is, in the
Okay,
end,
I'm going to give you a scenario.
in the end, Shaw came back in the second period.
I'm going
That
to give you a
was-
scenario. 5-year-old Mike and 5-year-old Russ are at the bus stop.
Right.
Neither of our parents are there. I walk up to Mike and I kick him in the junk. Later on that day, Mike's mother calls my mother, who again would be a great phone call to because she would defend me to the death. My
I
mother
did pay-per-view for that one. Go ahead.
and so your mother's calling, and my mother says, "Well, listen, Mike left himself in a vulnerable position. It's his fault.
Yeah,
He could have put his hands there.
that sounds like
Mike
my
could have
mom.
had his hands there, but he didn't.
That sounds like my mom. She'd sell me down the river.
Wouldn't take
But
very
that's
long.
essentially what this is like. That's the scenario here. That's
Yeah.
Hockey is not beanbag. This is like you got to protect yourself, especially in this game. Now,
Beanbag is dangerous, man.
Now let me just say this. I mean, Alexei Emelin, I didn't think that hit on Pasternak was dirty. I thought the one on Joe Colburn on Saturday when the score was 10-1 was ridiculous. This guy is public enemy number 1 in the NHL. He's a weasel of the highest order. And I heard last night from Jeff Merrick on Sportsnet that the reason that he doesn't engage in fights when players try to get back at him is because he's got plates in his face from an incident with, I think it was Svitov. I don't know if it was in the KHL or in the NHL, but he can't fight because he's got plates in his face. Then you know what? Don't throw hits like that, because if you're gonna throw hits like that, you're gonna have to pay the piper, and eventually somebody's not gonna care that he has plates in his face. They're just gonna cave in his face.
Fair
I
enough.
get
We'll
that
leave it there.
I get that it's a dangerous game. I do. But some of these hits is just like, okay, it is because the teams hate each other. Let's be real about it. It's not because that was a hockey play, because that wasn't, Torrey Krug's play was not a hockey play.
Yeah, and then one that wasn't included in this video, Radulov hit the defenseman Miller into the boards late in the first period, and Radulov, being the typical Montreal Canadian, sort of turned tail and didn't want to engage.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like you've got one team, and the thing is, Boston's not exactly like the big bad Bruins anymore. But that game was out of hand, and it was entertaining as all hell, because both teams were. I mean, I don't know how many power plays Montreal got. I think they probably had 8 or 9. At least it felt that way. But it was a big victory for the Bruins. You had 2 great goaltenders in Rask and Price, and really
It was all-time Bruins Montreal hockey. It's
great game.
It's it is probably my favorite.
Yeah,
if I
I
was
harken
doing my
back-
rivalries, it would be in my top 3 along with the Flyers and the Penguins. And I just think that this is such a great rivalry. And
I harken back to the days of those great 3-on-3 overtime wins that the Bruins had against the Canadians and the Canadians had against the Bruins. Those were always great.
3-on-3 overtime wins.
Well, that's what it was.
That's so funny. You're right. So this happened. Johnny Hockey has officially been trademarked by Johnny Gaudreau. It's been accepted. You can't call your team the Golden Knights, but you can call yourself Johnny Hockey. the trademark office recently, coming into favor on our show for not allowing the Golden Knights to be called their name for the time being, was fine with Johnny Hockey apparently, because no one else is called Johnny who plays hockey, and I don't understand trademarking. This is what I want to throw out there. I'm just like, I wish I understood it better, but all right. So Sports Professional Management, which is a New Jersey corporation, by the way, in Englewood Cliffs, which is where I guess that's technically the management company for Johnny Gaudreau's stuff.
Johnny Hockey Inc.
So it's been trademarked for clothing, namely shirts, t-shirts, tanks, tops, polo shirts, button-down shirts, sweaters, sweatshirts, hooded sweatshirts, jackets, coats, belts, jeans, pants, baby tees, tops, dresses, blouses, skirts, thermal shirts, shorts, socks, suits, ties, robes, swimwear, rainwear, sleepwear, underwear, scarves, bandanas, beanies, hats, and caps.
Rainwear. Where's rainwear coming in? But here's the thing. I get the branding and all this. Could they wait until he's doing better to tell us? They could have just filed this anonymously. Nobody would have known. But it just, the timing of it's kind of weird because, like, if this were last year, we'd be like, hey, it makes sense, right? He's at the top of his career. But right now, there's a little struggle going on with Johnny.
Cancel that order we did for the 500,000 Johnny Hockey underwear things that we were going to sell as far as the Hockey BuzzCast. I'll be right back, guys. Just no.
But, like the timing of it is just weird. Like, it's just, why didn't you just sort of keep that quiet? Because clearly, I don't think the website that posted that was searching trademarks that day.
I'm going to call myself Pelly Podcast. Is that okay? Can I be Pelly Podcast from now on?
Sure. Yeah.
Pelly Podcast. I'm going to trademark it. Pelly Podcast. I don't know. It's very strange to me when someone thinks that they can control the entire sport of something. Like Johnny Football, right? Isn't there? I think he trademarked his name as well, right?
Yeah, where's he now?
Well, yeah, Johnny Hockey, for his credit, at least is a very good player.
Yes.
And doing his thing. But all right, Darnell Nurse underwent surgery to repair ankle and ligament bone damage. He'll miss up to 12 weeks. Terrible news for the Oilers. And one of the more exciting, kind of under acknowledged players in the NHL, Darnell Nurse, who I just love watching him play. He brings so much enthusiasm to the game. He really is just one of those great players, and he's going to be gone for 12 weeks, which is a real big blow to the Oilers.
The one thing I would have to be concerned about if I were the Edmonton Oilers is the extent of the injury. We're talking ligament and bone damage. I mean, not just, 12 weeks is 12 weeks, but if he comes back at 100% and he comes back without any limitations in terms of his skating ability, which is one of the big pluses in his game, then that's fine. But if he's slowed down, if he's not as good as he was coming back, then this is a big loss because this is a guy who I think is a building block on their blue line. And as we know about the Oilers, their blue line is their Achilles heel. And if you lose Nurse, I mean, first of all, you lose him for 3 months, that's going to hurt them for the remainder of the season. Yeah. But if you lose the player that he could be because of limitations, because of this injury, then it's a disaster.
Without looking, how many points are the Oilers ahead of the Flames?
2.
1 point.
Yeah.
They've lost a lot of points.
I did look recently. I just looked this morning because I was doing my blog that I put up there. But yeah.
But Edmonton's lost a lot of points lately.
Yep.
No, I agree. Another interesting stat for today: the Winnipeg Jets set a record last night that I don't think many people knew about.
I was going to say number of goals scored on their own net.
Yeah, Patrick Laine did score on himself last night. Look it up; it happened. No, they've played 32 games, and since the beginning of the season, they have done those 32 games in 60 days, which is a new record for the NHL.
Yeah.
For a team playing, 32 games. So basically, that's obviously more than one game every 2 days.
Which I think affected a rookie like Patrick Laine. I do. I think that's too much.
Yeah. I mean, it's a crazy statistic.
Well, I mean, the compacted schedule because of the World Cup, and if you look at a team like I looked at Toronto's schedule. They were one of the teams that had played some of the fewest games, and now in the next, like starting on Saturday, they played 7 games in 10 days. I mean, then they're going to catch up really quickly, and a young team like Winnipeg is, like Toronto is. Players that are not used to the 82-game grind, plus in a compacted schedule, you get on a losing streak, you start getting tired, it's going to be tough to pull out of. And Winnipeg was doing really well. Right now I think they sort of cooled down a little bit. Line A is, he's an immense talent, but yeah, this season more than, and this is one of the reasons why I'm for like the elimination of the All-Star game, because I just think you're compacting 82 games into too small of a window. It's 3 or 4 games a week every week, and now you've got this mandated NHLPA negotiated 1 week off in the middle of the season. That compacts the schedules even more.
I'll tell you what I think. And I'm convinced that what has to happen here is we have to get rid of a week of preseason and just and start the NHL on October 1st.
But what are you going to do with that revenue? Because now that you've given owners that revenue, they won't want to take it away.
I know, but figure out a way.
So you got to replace that revenue somehow.
How much do you have to raise every ticket price? Like $1 per game? I mean, it's like something like that would just make for better product.
I'm for that. I think that's fine. Yeah.
And there is a way of replacing that revenue and less injuries. I mean, we all agree the preseason has a moment when it feels like it needs to be over, and you have another week to go.
Well, I don't know what every NHL team does, but I know, like in say the Atlantic Division, these teams play 8 preseason games.
I know. All teams play different amounts. It's another thing. Preseason games, there's some teams play more, some teams play less.
Right. Like a team like the Rangers seemingly goes at least 3 road games, sometimes 4 in the preseason. And they, and look, they're a big draw. I get it. But you do have to sort of look at this and say, it's a little too much.
Just one less week of preseason, one more week of regular season. Start October 1st. You don't have to make these games so crazy.
Toronto plays home and homes against Montreal, Ottawa, Detroit, and Buffalo.
Yes, they're playing all these split squad games, which is crazy, right? So that's like, and that's the other thing, right? On top of it all, the split squad games. So those are, right. And you just don't need these games. You just don't need this. There's a point at which we know what we've got what we need out of the preseason, and we say it every year. It's just like the preseason is really interesting for a while. You're getting to see these young players. Are we going to send them back? Are we going to keep them? And then you're like, okay, and then everything feels right. And then we've got 3 more games next week in the preseason. Every year it's the same feeling, So I want to get into buyers and sellers because I've been doing something. I'm working right now on my rumor chart, which is going to come out by the end of next week.
This is going to be like a Pawn Stars segment? What is this?
Buyers and sellers, yes. This is right. This is where I show you a left wing and you tell me how valuable he is based on, what you've known. All right, so every year I do this. I usually do it privately, but this year I thought I would just put it out there publicly as my buyer. And I've come up with a formula, which Russell love, a mathematical formula involving 12 different factors. And I've done it all these years. And what it does is it takes into account certain things that I'll tell you some of them without revealing all of my secrets. But I take the points of teams out of the playoffs into account. And I also take equal to that, I take how many teams a team must pass to make the playoffs, which I always think is the more important number. Mm-hmm. And the same goes if how many teams you're ahead if you're in the playoffs. So that helps you in that way. I look at cap space, of course, because cap space plays into buying and selling a lot. And then I take pending free agents, how many a team is out of it, but has a lot of free agents that aren't going to be a part of their future. And then I also look at marketplace and expectations, which I think is really important to know because some teams, the expectations are so high that they have to make the playoffs. It can be, the marketplace expectations is not necessarily mutual, exclusive to itself. Like, for example, let's look at Florida. Okay, the marketplace in Florida it's not really a demanding marketplace, but the expectations were that they were going to be a playoff team this year. Yeah. So that's, I take this all into account. And through this, I end up with sellers and buyers. And sometimes I have as many as, 4 buyers and the rest are sellers, and sometimes the opposite. Right now I have, in the Eastern Conference, I'm going to do the Western Conference tomorrow. The Eastern Conference, I have 9 buyers and 7 sellers, which makes it a seller's market right now when you have, obviously, because if you have more buyers, that's a good thing for sellers. So now the interesting thing about this is my very strong buyers, I rank these with point values. So number 1, Montreal Canadiens at 45.05. That's a really high number. When you get near 50 on my buyer chart, you're definitely making trades. I've noticed this. It's just uncommon. 50 is crazy. The Rangers right behind them at 40.07, and right behind them, the Columbus Blue Jackets at 40.65, which is basically the same as the Rangers, as the 3 very strong buyers in the East. Columbus has a ton of cap space. we've got like $16.5 million in cap space, and they've got a team that is actually crazy. I mean, they're 31 plus in goal differential. That's another thing I put in this is goal differential. I'm a big fan of that too.
They actually have more potential cap space than that because they have the ability to put David Clarkson's $5.25 million on long term.
Yeah. I mean, they can do, and if this team continues to play like they're playing, they could win the division first off because they've played 5 less games than everybody else,
Right.
Which is a good thing, but not always a great thing. Sometimes, when you have to play those games, you have to play them at some point. And sometimes if you have to make up those games at the end of the season where you're already more tired, I feel that sometimes it's an overvalued thing when someone says, oh, they're in great shape because they played 5 less games.
Yeah.
Strong buyers, Pittsburgh and Washington. Even though Washington's struggling, but Pittsburgh's at 36, Washington's at 20.75. And then I have likely buyers, Philadelphia, Ottawa, and Boston at 18.5, 15.8, and 15.1 respectively. And then possible buyers, a possible buyer at Tampa at number 9. Tampa has some space because of obviously, I think Tampa's number is going to go up a lot higher. I think right now they're still struggling, but that if they start winning some more games, and right now they're not in the playoffs.
Right.
But if they're in the playoffs, their buyer I think could very much be a stronger or very strong buyer. Then in
here's the thing, though, I don't know how much of a buyer the Flyers are going to be. Even if the Flyers continue on this pace, I still feel like they may sell off an asset before they buy anything.
I think that they will make a player for player trade. I agree with you on that. So it's hard to sometimes player for player is a buyer / seller move, right? So
they'll do that. They'll definitely do that.
Or as we've seen over the last couple of years, they could sell a guy like Strite, who's a UFA, and then buy in another area, get another rental in another area.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
I think Tampa has the possibility of being a buyer a lot earlier than people think because Stamkos is going to be out until probably the playoffs. They have that $8 million room sitting in there. So maybe in January you could see Steve Yzerman being proactive and making a move. I also think Florida is going to do something because I think they're desperate to win and desperate.
Well, Florida is just below the buyer seller line right now at minus 5.95. So if you're a minus number, like Tampa's plus 2.2, Florida's minus 5.95. So if you're a minus number that high, there's still a good chance that they could be buyers, even though I list them as a possible seller right now, along with New Jersey at minus 0.89.
Right.
Likely sellers, Toronto, Carolina, and Detroit. Strong sellers right now would be the Islanders. Right now the Islanders are in such a spot right now where, the statistics say that they're a strong seller. Now we know to take into account that.
Won't sell.
Yeah, they're not really going to sell because, this is a statistical thing. And, I do have an expectations meter in there, which, along with that, there is also like a desperation meter. And the Islanders desperation meter is going to get very high very soon if they're not in the playoffs.
I think a strong seller is going to be Buffalo simply because if you look at their roster with so many UFAs, Gianta, Franzen, Kulikov, guys that they're probably not going to re-sign, they could very easily sell those guys for draft picks and prospects. Yeah. And Toronto is the unusual one because they don't have many UFAs that people want. Like Roman Polak is one.
Yeah, is really there. Yeah,
is a depth defenseman. They've got 3 guys who are 1 year away from being UFA, and Van Riemsdyk, Bozak, and Komarov, who might be interesting. And they have $13 million in cap room that they can open up by putting either Lupul, Robidas, or Horton on long-term injury. So you could see dump deals from teams looking to open up cap space.
Right.
And we know that the Leafs did that last year. They're going to do it again this year.
Which puts them in, which is why their number is higher than I think people would think, because they're only at minus 10, which is not what you would expect for Toronto right now. But because they have all that cap space and the potential cap space, which is also a factor that I have in here. Yeah, they could still be buyers technically, even though they're not buying necessarily to make the playoffs.
Right. One weird thing about the Islanders, they're in a weird spot right now because John Ledicki is the main owner. He is doing this search for team president, maybe even, future GM, that kind of thing. While that is going on, I don't think the desperation meter is getting that high. I've now gotten the impression that they're just going to roll with this and whatever happens this season. And I don't know if there's going to be any impactful move that the Islanders do other than when they signed Cal Clutterbuck, just because they decided they were going to keep him.
Yeah. No, I thought the Cal Clutterbuck signing was a suspicious one in my mind. I wasn't on that day because of family stuff, but yeah, it felt to me as if, I don't know why they had to do it now.
I know why. Because
go ahead, tell me.
He's very close with John Tavares. Tavares came out and said that the coach really likes Clutterbuck, and I think they wanted to make everybody happy to see if that would change the dynamic. That's what I think.
Man, okay, that's interesting. I mean, I know he's a strong personality, Clutterbuck, and yeah, and they're trying to do good stuff for Tavares, but if the best they're doing for Tavares is Clutterbuck, they've
I mean,
yeah,
it's a start.
It's a start, I guess. Yeah, no, it is definitely a start. But so tomorrow I'll have the buyers and sellers rankings for the West, and I'll be doing this weekly. I'll be updating it, because it is interesting to see it. Actually, it's more interesting to see it how it moves from week to week.
Mhm.
That this is your starting point right now, and I usually don't start until till December. So because this is when you can start to actually matters. I mean, there are teams that are, only 7 points out of the playoff spot, but have to crawl over 7 teams. So that's tricky. That's very tricky. Last thing I had today, I had one other fun thing for you all today. A couple things. Follow Hockey Buzz at Hockey Buzz on Twitter. That is
I highly recommend it.
Thank you. It is the actual Twitter account to follow for Hockey Buzz at Hockey Buzz. We're going to be doing some giveaways and fun stuff in the future there. So I definitely think it's definitely something I would like you guys all to keep an eye on at Hockey Buzz. Also, I've gotten a lot of your information now for Patreon. If you're a Patreon subscriber to the website at patreon.com/hockey, make sure you email me at a special address that I put on the Patreon. So go to the Patreon site and check it. It's a thread you can see. You can only see if you are a Patreon subscriber. There's a special email address on there. And then I will be setting up meetings this week on Thursday and Friday to talk with everybody and individually have like a conversation with you all, because I really appreciate what you've done. And then we'll be getting back into we'll be getting some, there's t-shirts to give out and stuff like that, which is all going to be coming up in the near future. So I appreciate that last night. And last night I wanted to thank Tom Merritt and the guys over at Cord Killers for having me on their podcast and pumping the Patreon thing as well, because they're some of the ones I found out about Patreon from. So that's a fun podcast, the Cord Killers podcast. If you're interested in hearing me talk about something besides hockey, that's where I go on and talk about technology, and mainly their show is about how to survive without cable TV. It's essentially what it is. It's something that I'm a big proponent of, and I'm now cable TV free for 6 months. And it's really, you didn't used to be able to do it with hockey because you had to, especially in Philadelphia, you had to have Comcast Sportsnet. But now you can actually do that with PlayStation View. You can get Comcast Sportsnet, so you can actually survive now without it. So something to check out. It's a fun podcast to check out as well. And I think that is all the time we have for today, unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about.
I'm good.
All right, cool. All right, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We'll be back again tomorrow. Have a great night. Enjoy the games tonight.